MetalmanX here. This time we're going to be taking a look at the massive 1/44 scale Night Hawk Spec.II from Red Soul. And as always, this review is brought to you by our good friends over at GundamCentralShop.com. Make sure to check them out. The link will be in the description. Alright, so coming in at roughly 26 centimeters, the Red Soul Night Hawk Spec.II is a massive kit, because this is a 1/144 scale kit. It's based in an RG style design and really will be a person who likes the details best friend. Just to give you an idea of how big this kit is, you may notice my setup is a lot different because it couldn't sit on my desk properly for the review because of the size of the backside. So this is a 1/100 scale RX-78, the Origin. As you can see, this thing is a massive 1/44 scale kit and will look really good next to the high new Gundam on the RG side. So let's get into this kit, because there's a lot I like about the kit, but at the same time there's a lot of issues here. Now, to clarify, this is a pre-release copy. So a lot of things were changed. So when I have my manual, it was a lot different than the actual build. I had several issues with the manual, but it looked like they had been updating it. And also, there was some speculation that this was from the same company, Solomon, that brought us the GPO2, and that is not true. Another thing to note with my review copy is it did not come with any water slides or stickers. So the final release is supposed to have those things, but mine did not. So I cannot review those aspects of this kit. Now, as far as building this kit, there were some tight spots and a lot of very... I want to say, like, the biggest problem with this kit is they chose to have a lot of kind of rubbery parts that fit in and have to hold together. Like, especially here on the back side. A lot of the problems I had with this kit was because I had to take it apart multiple times when I was doing final assembly. So it was kind of a rough build, but it wasn't because things weren't fitting. Most things on this kit fit really, really well, but there are areas, especially here on the back, where just a little bit of pressure and pull will cause these to come off, because you have this gray frame that goes throughout most of the larger sections of the kit. This gray frame is made up of a rubbery plastic, and it's not bad. It's not like it's falling apart or anything at all times, but it does not hold very stable. So you do have to be very careful when moving this kit that things won't fall off. Another major area I had issues with were with these yellow parts. So this is kind of a consumer beware. I thought I had these things in tight, but you really have got to push on them to get them in place, or this whole back assembly will not fit together. However, there are some very good upsides to this kit. They have done a really good job in creating a lot of depth and a lot of detail. So if you're a modeler that really likes to detail their kits, this is going to be very much up your alley. There is a lot of inner working parts here that have a lot of detail that could really use some touch up. So if you like the detail on the RG Sazabi, this is gonna look really good. However, like I said, there are some weak spots on this kit. One of the biggest issues, and people pointed this out in a lot of the photos that I posted ahead of this review, was the front, how do you put it, CODS piece. Let's go with that. Because you had this giant thing here, And they made a decision on this kit to make it 2 halves. Well, problem is, this is exactly where you're going to end up with one of the fitting issues. And so you have this huge seam line running right down the middle of this. So I actually ended up having to glue this together. I had to take clamps and push it together and glue it together. Here on the front skirts, you do have a sliding moving gimmick with the side panels here. I'm just gonna pop one off so we can take a closer look. So one thing about this is it does have a little bit of a sliding moving gimmick here, but what's interesting is there's also a sliding gimmick on the inside of the front, this part. However, when you're building it, you see the sliding gimmick in there, but then you use an art piece and lock it in place underneath the armor. And you have to have that piece in order to complete this. And so it's kind of a missed opportunity. And I wonder, at what stage mine was in production and how that's gonna look. Now we also have some little arms in here. These are probably the most janky part of this kit, really. These are the ones I'm really worried about accidentally breaking, but they can be used to hold a beam saber. Now, these beam sabers, just a FYI, at least it was in my manual, these were not mentioned once. So they do fit really well in here, but at the same time, they weren't mentioned once. It took me a little bit to realize what these pieces were for. So, keep that in mind, that you do have that option. I don't really care for the beam sabers on this one too much. They're very, 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 very basic, but I guess that's to be expected. As far as posability goes, this kit is very, very limited, but I think that's kind of to be expected, especially because it is a mobile armor type suit. It's made for space and stuff like that, so you're not really looking for a lot of articulation. You can move the legs, you have articulation, but really you're not going to be able to do much with it because of the weight. Some areas of the kit, like for example, if we do this, it's going to fall right back down. It is super heavy. That back end is just going to plop right back down. The arms have some decent articulation on them, especially in the shoulders. You have a good moving gimmick right there, so you'll get a lot of space out of that. But the regular parts of the arms, the forearms and things like that, are limited as well. One area of concern that I have is these. They are not very strong. They kind of just flop. They just move back and forth, so they're not that big of a deal. But you're not going to be able to really pose those. So there are several issues that I've experienced with this kit. It really is kind of a kit where you set it and forget it. So one of the highlights of this kit is all the thrusters. And yes, this thing is super back heavy. This is about the pose you can get. Also, the waist is super loose, so it's going to slide around on you when you move it. This thing does have a lot of loose stuff, like the arms will easily pop off. They're just held in by a peg. So you have a lot of RG style details and construction. However, in some places where it really would have counted for this kit, you do have some very basic construction. I would have loved them, since this is the size or bigger than an MG. They had a lot of opportunity to really do what they wanted with this. But here it is what it is. So for the thrusters, you have a ton of thrusters on. See, here's an example right here. This just popped off because it's on this like rubbery plastic. So a lot of pressure fitting, for this kit. So you have a ton of thrusters, and I love thruster details. I think they're really, really awesome. These look really cool. They are a bit of a pain to put together, but they do work pretty well, and they move around independently. And once they're in place, they're in place. So if I can get my arms over here so you guys can see that a bit better. You got a ton of thrusters in there and there on the backs of the legs, the chicken legs that this thing has. So really cool that they put that in here. And like I said, this thing is a detailer's dream. If you want to detail this up, you'll have a really good time. It does hold its weapon fairly well. Trying to find a good pose for it. And I do like the new design on the head. However, it does make it extremely heavy. So if you lift it up, it's gonna fall right back down. At least that's the experience I've had with mine. So I really do like the details on this kit. One word of caution, when you are putting these in, these large bottom propellant tanks, you're gonna want to actually take the sides off of the butt flap here, because they are not going to be able to go in without you doing that. So make sure you do that. You also have some funnels here, no effects for them, but they do pop off. Let's see if I can get that in frame. Sorry, I know it's a little bit different than what I normally do. Let me know in the comments if you actually like this setup. I might try it again in the future. So pop that back in. One thing is, when you put something together, it starts to pop apart. So make sure you're gentle with it. One thing to note on this kit is that you will need glue. There are some areas in the manual that specifically call for glue up here on the chest. And there are other areas that I ended up gluing as I went along. Overall, I do really like the design and think it would fit really great on a shelf. So let's go on to the final score. With trying to keep in mind that this is a pre-release kit, my final score for it, as it is right now, not counting anything about the decals or anything like that, is going to be a C+. This kit tries a lot of things, and it's gonna look good on your shelf, especially if you detail it up, but don't expect too much out of it. So there are gonna be some very frustrating sections. I had to unbuild mine and build it multiple times, and I would really have loved to give it a B-, but at the end of the day, with as many floppy parts that are on here and really the issues I had with building it, I have to go to that C or C+. And that's going to do it for this review. We'll see you next time here on MetalmanX Builds.